Hello everybody, I think the last time we stopped at this particular independent samples t-test, and just to refresh your memory from the earlier independent samples t-test we did, what we found out was basically, if you look at it, if I just move the screen up a bit, here we saw that the actual mean values were different from each other, and at the same time we saw the sig value here as 0.003, and so we saw the bottom and it was significant, and we decided that there was a significant or statistically significant difference between those who did not complete high school and those who had high school in terms of the years at the current address. So if you notice, we found out that people who completed high school, they lived basically who had a high school degree were 5.46 years, whereas those who did not complete, who lived at the current address, were for 8.1. Now, I did another test here for the same thing, but what we looked at is some with college degree and the other with just basic high school qualification. Now, if you look at this here, the means are different, but the question is, are they statistically significantly different? Now, to better understand this, I'm going to take you to the PowerPoint slide that we had. And let me just show you the slide, which is under your inferential statistics. And if you can have a look at this particular slide, which is called independent samples t-test. What were they looking here? We looked at in terms of education group, undergraduate and postgraduate, and the last time they donated, and how much it was. So here if you notice, those who had undergraduate qualification donated $35.39 and postgraduate at this. Although they were different, but the question is we want to look at it in terms of statistically significantly different. Now we go to the Levene's t-test. Now what is happening? This is above 0.05 level. Now the fact that is if it's above 0.05 level, we look at the same row. Now when you look at the same row, look at the significance two-tail. Now significant two-tail here is 0.783. So what's the meaning of 0.783? And let me just show you in terms of what do I mean by 0.783. So when we say something is significant at 0.783, what we are saying is the actual statistical significance is 1 minus 0.783. So what would this be? This would basically be equal to a probability of something like this happening would be something like 21.7. That is 1 minus this, and or maybe if I just put it in the same figures there, it will be 0.217, which will translate to 21.7% chance of something like this happening. Now for statistical purposes, now when there is only a 21.7% chance of basically having any form of statistically significant difference, what would we say here? Now if you look at this here again, I'll take you back to the slide. There's only a 21% chance of something like this happening. So as far as statisticians are concerned, if anything is got to happen and we can project it to the population, it's got to be above 95% chance of happening. Okay, chance of taking place. Now, if that is what we are looking at, so if it's going to be above 95%, that means the basic level that we are looking for, p-value, is got to be anything below 0.05. All right. So if we see that the sig two-tail is below 0.05, then we can say that it is statistically significantly different. However, here it is 0.783. We can see that the means are different, but for this to happen to the population, for them to be different, could only happen by chance. Okay, this is exactly what you need to understand. You need to understand that first we looked at the Levene's t-test. It was above 0.05, so we didn't go to the bottom row. We went to the top row, and when we went to the top row, we saw that it's 0.783. So if it's 783, that means we can conclude that what we can conclude for this case here, 0.783, is there is no statistically statistical. There's no statistical difference, or statistically, let's put it the right way, statistically significant difference between the two groups. And here, which are the two groups? We're talking about one group being high school and the other one being, that is I'm talking here again in relation to the PowerPoint slide that you have in Unit 9. This is the one I'm talking about. Here we're talking about undergraduate and postgraduate. But for our example, we are looking at this SPSS output, which is talking about some college and high school degree. Alright, so we're talking about some college and high school degrees. Okay, so now you can see there is no statistically significant difference between the two groups, that is high school and so if that is the case, what do we conclude? We can now conclude that for the population, sorry about all this, there would not be any difference in relation to their, what is that we were testing here? Let's go back to the output again. In relation to their living in a current address and whether they were actually different from each other. Alright, so here what we can conclude is we can now conclude that for the population there is no we can now conclude that for the population there is no difference in relation to their staying at the current address. So no statistically significant difference or no difference at all. So what we're trying to say, although there was a slight difference in the mean, that is, now let's get back to the output here again, the mean, and here the mean here is basically 6 and 5.46. 6 that is 6.00 and 0.00 and 5.46. Now this is what it shows in the output, and we can say that although there's a slight difference in the mean in terms of this, but statistically they are not significantly different from each other. And what we can also say, things like this would only happen by chance in relation to the population. Alright? Because why do we say that? Because there's only a 21.7% chance of something like this happening. All right, percent chance. And how do we get that? That is 1 minus of something like this happening. All right. So I just want to take you back again to the actual output. Now, if you look at the output here, look at the output closely. There were some who had college degree and some had high school degree, and they had different means, but